A former president is asking the Justice Department to pay him $230 million. Not for a policy, not for damages, for his own legal bills. He says those court fights weren't personal. They were part of his job. He believes the government, not him, should cover the cost. The Justice Department he's talking about is the same one that once investigated him. The same one that charged his allies, and now he wants that same department to cut him a check. It's hard to wrap your head around. In Washington, the reaction is split. Some people say he's right, that presidents shouldn't have to pay out of pocket when lawsuits come from doing their job. Others say it's outrageous, that he's trying to use taxpayer money to clean up his own mess. But here's what makes it even more complicated. Some of the officials who'd have to review this claim used to work for him. They were part of his inner circle. They defended him in court, and now they're the ones who might decide whether he gets paid. So this isn't just about a payout. It's about power. About whether the system meant to hold leaders accountable can still do that, or if it's quietly learning to serve them instead. After leaving office, Donald Trump didn't just walk away from politics. He walked into years of investigations and lawsuits. Federal probes, civil suits, state cases, and all of it cost millions in legal fees. To his supporters, these cases weren't about justice. They were payback. Political attacks dressed up as law enforcement. Through it all, Trump kept saying the same thing. He was being punished for doing his job. That every time he fought back, he was defending the presidency, not himself. It became a central part of his message, that he was standing up to a system trying to destroy him. Now that argument has turned into a massive claim against the government. He's asking the Department of Justice to reimburse him roughly $230 million. His team says most of those cases were connected to his time in office, meaning the government should have covered the cost. The idea isn't completely unheard of. Sometimes federal officials get legal help if they're sued for something done as part of their duties. But this is different. No president has ever asked for anything close to this amount, and never from the same department that once investigated them. Inside the Justice Department, it's creating a quiet storm. The claim forces current officials to decide if defending a president's actions, even ones under investigation, counts as an official expense. And if it does, who decides where the line is? What makes it all even harder is who's in the room. Some of the people involved in reviewing this request used to work for Trump. They know him. They served under him. That connection raises questions no one really wants to answer. Can they make a fair call? Or will loyalty, pressure, and politics cloud what should be a legal decision? This is where the story really begins, now not with money but with power. The kind that doesn't just sit in courtrooms or offices, but in relationships, influence, and the gray space between duty and favor. Now the situation inside the Justice Department gets messy. Real messy. People start asking, could this really happen? Could a president, even a former one, ask for taxpayers to cover his legal fees? And if he does, should the government say yes? Some argue that it's fair. They say Trump wasn't just defending himself, he was defending the presidency. The argument is that if he had to deal with lawsuits because of his role as president, the government should pick up the tab. That's the way things have worked for other officials in the past. But there's another side to this, and it's a lot less comfortable. Critics say it's a power grab, plain and simple. They see this as Trump trying to get the system to pay for his own mess, something no other president would even think about doing. They argue it's a dangerous precedent. If this goes through, what's to stop future presidents from using the government as their personal defense fund? The debate intensifies when people start to realize who's involved in making this decision. Some of the officials now tasked with deciding whether or not to approve the payout used to work for Trump. They defended him during his presidency. Some of them even worked on the cases he's now asking the government to pay for. And now they're sitting at the table, possibly deciding whether their former boss gets a check for millions of taxpayer dollars. It's not just about the money anymore. It's about loyalty versus accountability. It's about trust. Can these officials make an unbiased decision? Or will loyalty, old friendships, and political pressure weigh too heavily on their judgment? As the story unfolds, the questions get harder to answer. What happens when those responsible for enforcing the law might be too personally connected to the person they're investigating? Can the system hold up under that kind of strain? And what does it say about the state of democracy, if it's at all possible for something like this to even be considered? Then, just when it seems like the situation couldn't get more complicated, a twist lands in the middle of everything. Leaked emails and documents start to surface. Turns out some of the people reviewing Trump's request aren't just former officials. They're people who've been deeply involved in his legal defense. Lawyers who worked on his cases, people who've known him for years, maybe even defended him against criminal charges. The news spreads fast, and with it, the questions become even more pointed. How can these people possibly make an impartial decision when they've been in the trenches with Trump for so long? How can they sit across the table, looking at the same numbers and not feel some kind of loyalty to the man they worked with or even for? It creates a firestorm. On one side, you've got those arguing that this is a clear conflict of interest, that these officials can't be trusted to make a fair call. On the other, there are still people pushing for the payout, claiming that the process is about fairness, that these people are just doing their jobs. But for most Americans watching, it starts to feel like a circus. The whole thing starts to feel like a test of the system. A system that's supposed to stand for fairness, for checks and balances. But now it looks like the people who should be enforcing the law might be too tangled up in their past ties to the very person who's asking for the money. What's supposed to be a legal decision now has a lot of people wondering, is this about justice? Or is this about keeping a circle tight, about loyalty winning out over what's best for the country? And here's the kicker. Trump doesn't back down. He doubles down. He says this is more than money, more than a request. It's about standing up to a system that tried to tear him down. He tells his supporters it's a fight for fairness, for the presidency itself. But for others, they see it as the final test, a final power grab. Eventually, the Justice Department faces an impossible situation. The pressure is coming from all sides. Trump's request has sparked outrage, divided opinions, and raised uncomfortable questions about fairness. But the department can't just ignore it. They have to respond. They know that whatever decision they make will have massive consequences. Finally, a statement comes down. They'll review the request under standard legal procedures. It's bureaucratic, almost cold. But behind the calm language is something much more intense. Every official involved knows that this is more than just paperwork. This is about preserving the integrity of the system. But the fallout doesn't stop there. People start to realize that by simply allowing this request to be reviewed, the Justice Department has opened up a whole new conversation about the power and responsibility of the presidency. It's no longer just about whether Trump deserves to be reimbursed. It's about whether any president now or in the future could pull this same stunt. And if they can, what happens to the balance of power? The debate rages on, with lawyers and pundits diving into the fine print of what it means to defend the office of the presidency. But for most people, the question is simple. Who gets to decide when a legal case is personal or when it's a duty of the office? And when that decision is made, does the public really trust the system to make it fairly? In the end, the Justice Department doesn't make a clean decision. They don't say yes, but they don't say no either. They stall. They delay. They push the problem into the future. It's a decision that leaves everyone frustrated, but no one with a clear answer. The payout is never fully approved, but the conversation lingers. The system is left shaken. There's no final resolution to this, no moment where everything gets tied up in a neat bow. Instead, it feels like a warning. How fragile the line is between loyalty, power, and accountability. So what's the real takeaway from all of this? Maybe it's that power at the highest levels always comes with a price, but sometimes the bill doesn't show up until much later. And when it does, it's something we're all asked to pay. Whether that's in dollars or in trust or in the erosion of the system that was built to protect us from abuses of power. In the end, this whole situation isn't really about Trump. It's about what happens when the system starts bending to those in power. When the people who are supposed to uphold justice start seeing themselves as above it. This wasn't just a legal case. It was a test of whether a democracy can truly hold itself accountable when the lines between personal and public interests start to blur. If Trump's claim is approved,